Hello again. So I received the question, where do I begin? If we are an emotional eater and we're just venturing into solving the problem, where do we even begin? And I think this is an incredible question that I've been sitting with and trying to figure out how to answer because I want to do a good job of not setting you up to perpetuate what you've done in the past. And so I've been thinking about it, and here's my answer. The answer to where you begin is with orientation, kind of like if you're beginning anything else. You have to go through an orientation before college, for example, so that you know where everything is, where you got to go, what you have to do, all the stuff that you have to prepare before you actually start going to class. And this is a similar thing because it requires an orientation, a reorientation to what we're actually doing here, what this actually is, what we're actually working with. And I say that because we can't move forward in a healthy way until we absolutely leave behind the old unhealthy patterns, behaviors, thoughts, beliefs, etc. So that is step one. Step one is orientation. And that begins with an understanding that maybe you've heard me say this in other videos. Your whole human experience includes a brain, a body, and your soul, your spirit, everything else that's unseen about the human condition. So while we're trying to lose weight with our bodies, we cannot do it without considering the other components. We have to consider what is going on primarily in the brain as well. So I say this because we have to understand before we even move forward that really the goal is not weight loss. The goal is to connect mind, body, soul so that your weight is not a problem. But if we continue targeting weight loss as our end goal, we're never going to get there. And there's a lot of reasons that that's true. But this is just where do I begin? And you begin with that, with an understanding of what your end goal is. You have to get clear on what it is. And if you're an emotional eater, you've heard me say, most likely, if the biggest problem you have with food is that you're an emotional eater, it's not a problem that you have with food. It's a question about how you're coping with your emotions. So, as part of orientation, you want to kind of use that as a mantra and keep coming back to that every time you get distracted with the old diet kind of thoughts and the mentality around portioning, tracking, calculating, restricting, eliminating foods. We have to remember this is not about food and eating. So, what is this really about? Well, it begins with an understanding of what is the brain science of stress and trauma. So, part of the reason that it matters in regards to trauma as it relates to emotional eating, compulsive addictive eating, or compulsive addictive dieting and restricting and weight loss, they can both be compulsive and addicting. But part of the reason that so many of us have ended up in this struggle is because all of us have experienced trauma. Now, big T trauma are the ones that we typically think of when it comes to trauma, which is, being kidnapped or raped or, the big ones. But the truth is, we all have little t's. We all have them because everyone has been in a situation where they felt powerless or scared or not in control. This is not something to be afraid of or ashamed of or embarrassed about. This is fundamentally part of the human experience. So why am I telling you about trauma is because part of what happens with trauma there's a lot that happens with trauma, but as it relates to emotional eating is when we go through this, part of the symptom, part of the consequence is dissociation, which basically means if we can't process, if we're not psychologically able to handle what's going on, this trauma, then what we do is kind of leave our body. And we see this a lot with emotional compulsive eating because a lot of it is mindless and disconnected activity around food. So I say all of this because what we're largely working with is not the food and the eating, but is the mindfulness of our day to day life, is how connected we are to our body while we're in it. So, some of the examples that I give, if we think about going to the gym and while your body is on the treadmill, your mind is watching TV. Mind body disconnect is a normalized part of our culture and our society, but it's also part of this problem. So I say all of this again so that you understand what you're actually working with. And you do not want to entertain any of a diet weight loss mentality because all of that is going to continue to further disconnect your mind from your body. We're doing math and calculations to figure out how to feed our body. We're all in here. We have to come back inside. Once we're back inside and you can listen to your body, you know your own cues. You don't have a weight or health issue to worry about, but it's about reconnecting inside. So, having said that, part of where you start, part of this orientation is also an understanding that no one knows your body the way that you do. No one. There are no experts. And what I see a lot is the people who are looking for answers admirably and collecting from all the health experts and all the health advice and looking at all of the information, very cognitive, very left brain, very thinking, analytical, data driven. It's not connected. It's not alignment. And there's nothing wrong with looking for advice and guidance and all those things. However, never ever do anything that doesn't resonate with you and what you want to do and how it feels for you. You are in charge. So, the concept of what's called bio-individuality is extremely important because you also have to understand that when other people tell you what to do, how to feed your body, how to move your body, you are listening to someone else, which is basically all saying you're giving your power away. And this is the process of reclaiming it and taking it back so that you become the only expert on your body and you know what you need. So, again, part of orientation has to be an understanding of what you're not doing anymore before we talk about all the things you are going to do. What you're not doing is looking for someone else to tell you how to live, how to eat, all of those things. So now, ultimately, this is a process of peeling off a lot of layers and unlearning a lot of what we've been taught. Unlearning that calories in, calories out was ever a good idea. Unlearning that we have to do an hour of cardio to burn enough calories. All of the stuff that is a diet mentality, we have to peel the layers off because what we're doing here is coming back to ourselves. I think I've said that. Now, in terms of where do you actually begin, the number one thing that I recommend if something that you're struggling with is emotional and compulsive eating, there are a few coping skills. All of them are designed to help connect your mind and body. So, just to name a few, mindfulness and just a mindful moment every day. For me, when I first started this, it was either brushing my teeth or getting in the shower. So, what does that mean? Practicing mindfulness is, again, your body is already doing it, your body's there. So, mindful, connecting mind to body is noticing your five senses during those moments. Are you actually connected there? That's mindfulness. Breathing exercises, so good for exactly this. Meditation, of course, journaling, yoga, huge. So those going outdoors, also big. Music can be very helpful. So these are my kind of favorite go-tos, but the number one place to start if what you're looking to do is connect mind, body, soul regarding food and eating issues is mindfully eat. Start with mindful eating, which means when you sit down to eat, just notice. First of all, turn off all the screens, all the distractions. You're not looking at anything, you're not watching anything, you're not doing anything, and you're not sitting there thinking about a million different things that you have to do, etc. Stop, pause, and try to just eat and see what that's like and what that feels like. Because what I've noticed is there's so much information that you can get by just looking at your experience around food. How do you actually eat? If you are constantly rushed and distracted, chances are you're not just rushed and distracted around food and eating, you're probably rushed and distracted most, if not all of the time, which again is what happens, the collective, the cumulative effect of the trauma, the existing as a human being on the planet kind of trauma that builds up. It's a lot easier to exist all in our head, totally distracted, thinking about a million different things, than it is to exist in our bodies, where we feel emotions that can sometimes be uncomfortable. So, that is kind of the number one homework assignment. This is the orientation homework assignment, is to sit down and see what comes up because it's very informative. And if what you find is that it is excruciating and it's so uncomfortable and you hate it and you're really impatient, it's all information. It's good stuff for you to know because that's really how this starts. Is again, we have to connect. Is our mind even present while we're eating food? Part of orientation, part of understanding what this really is being able to see that food and eating and your body and your weight are the mechanism through which your subconscious is communicating with your conscious brain. So if we can get them to communicate in other ways, food and eating just becomes food and eating again for your body, the way normal people do it. So that's what I say for where do you begin? I think you have to have a real expectation of what it is you're headed for. And what you're headed for is abundantly different, if not the exact inverse of everything that got us to this point, which is how do I eat? I don't even know what's going on in my body or my brain for that matter. What we're doing is realigning and reconnecting and using food, eating, dieting, all of it as just a mechanism for information. We get to learn a lot about ourselves in our relationship to food. And that's what this is. This is not all about weight loss. How do you change your body and all of that? So I'm going to leave it there. Please let me know if this makes sense. I was also thinking if you're interested in some of my clients do a food log that is absolutely very different than every food log associated with any diet ever. Um, and if you're interested, if you're seeing this and you're interested in what that looks like, I'll leave my email in the notes and you can just email me directly and I can send it over to you. So please let me know if you have any questions and thank you for being here.